All right, I will call this, is this a workshop meeting or?
It is.
All right, so town council budget workshop meeting, on Thursday, November 17th, and I'll call the meeting to order. So since it's a workshop, we don't really need a roll call, right?
I've noted, present and including who's on this, the Zoom, correct?
We've got
Yeah.
4 of us here in the room and 3 of us on.
Yeah.
So. And, this is a budget workshop, as I said. We're going to start out with item number 1, overview of the budget adoption process. Preston, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And please bear with me, my throat's a little scratchy. I feel fine, but I feel like my voice is going, and I don't even talk that much, which is kind of weird.
Sounds like Pam doesn't agree, but that's all right.
Well, maybe I just finally said something so funny. Do an overview of the agenda real quick. I'll talk for a few minutes, give an overview of the adoption process. I'll try to skim over some of the stuff in this PowerPoint. I don't want to read through it like I did at the budget retreat. I'm happy to do it if you guys would like, but no need that goes. And then I'll turn it over to Pam to do an overview of the proposed 2023 fiscal year budget. That includes financial overview. We'll follow up on any items from the last couple of meetings related to direction or requests for information. And then you all can discuss accordingly and afford public comment here in the room or on Zoom. And then we'll transition to review and direction on the funding requests that the town's received to date, the council initiatives, if you will. And then we'll round out with review and direction on the proposed 2023 strategic plan. So the budget document in general holds a number of purposes, and there's 3 major ones that are on the slide before you. It's intended to meet legal requirements as set out in Colorado revised statutes and state budget law. It states projected revenues and expenditures, and it's meant to prioritize objectives and establish a work plan for like the next fiscal year. So hugely important, and I commend you all for bearing with us in this process. No, it's not easy, and it takes a substantial amount of time to understand what's being proposed and to get to this point. So really appreciate you guys spending the time on this, and really appreciate Pam and her staff because they've done a ton of work. This is one of those slides I was talking about. This is the budget requirements as set forth in the Ridgway Home Rule Charter. I won't read through it, but it does set forth the budget requirements. Good stuff in there. Want to review the timeline real quick, just so you guys know how we got to this point. I know you guys do, but this workshop is as much for the public as it is for council. So mid-September to late September, Pam and I met with town staff to understand needs and wants, and to get an initial draft of the budget formulated. That initial draft that was formulated was introduced to you all per state statute on October 12th. On Saturday, October 29th, you all council met in this room for about a 5.5 hour retreat. Really good discussion outcomes from that meeting on a Saturday, of course. So thank you for that. Met last week in the regular meeting on November 9th. Had what I characterize as a hearing, but it was another opportunity for you all to delve into the budget, ask any questions, and there were some really good questions that came up from you all and members of the public as it related to capital planning, water in particular. And then here we are tonight, November 17th, in a standalone budget workshop. And you're on the home stretch. December 14th is the regular council meeting. You all will be slated to consider adopting the 2023 fiscal year budget. That includes the capital projects plans, the 5-year and 10-year, and the 2023 strategic plan. And of course, we'll consider approving the resolution certifying the oil mill levy. budget approach, I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know Pam and I subscribe to this conservative budget approach and philosophy, and I've articulated it to you all a number of times over the years, and I certainly hope we all share it. We want to balance core operation expenses with conservative revenue projections, ensure long-term fiscal stability, provide for the delivery of quality services, and maintain an enhanced service delivery, and establish reserves necessary to meet known and unknown future obligations. Hugely important. The next few slides are financial overviews of the three funds. There's one slide that falls in between them, but this one depicts the general fund, projected, of course, beginning fund balance, revenues, total available resources, expenditures, and then a projected ending general fund balance of just north of $3 million, which is very healthy and a record.
It is.
That's a general fund, and a little bit more on the general fund. This slide should look a little familiar from the presentation at the retreat, but want to highlight the 3% or the state mandated or TABOR required 3% emergency reserve, which is a percentage of general fund expenditures. A little spreadsheet there depicts what we're looking at when you couple not only that 3% TABOR emergency reserve with projected remaining additional fund balance, which is a substantial amount. That reserve as a percentage of expenditures is 76.13%. Substantial.
I have a quick question, Preston,
Yep. Sorry.
or maybe it's a comment. To your point, 76% substantial and record setting. And without offering anything specific, I'm wondering just in general, if there is a need to retain that much of a ratio. In other words, is there something we can be doing with a lesser ratio that keeps us healthy and yet forwards or advances some of the objectives in our master plan or some of our, outward objectives in serving the town in meeting some of the objective statements that you had in the previous slide. So it's a very high level general comment. I think this is incredible, but is it too incredible? I guess is my question.
I think that's a great question, one that I can't answer. I can opine on it. I think we all can. Of course, that's a lot of money, and you talk about the opportunity cost. Well, it wouldn't really be opportunity cost, but you talk about. I think what you're getting at is, could we be putting some of those funds towards something in particular, right? This year or in subsequent years, absolutely, and that's part of why we're here, to figure out when the right time is to earmark and devote some of these funds. But from where I'm sitting, being fiscally conservative and prudent is always really important. So I'm proud, and Pam's really proud of being at this point. But again, Terry, I think you raise a good question, and if there's a desire to put a sharper eye on these revenues in order to figure out what to apply it towards based on all the things that we want to achieve, we should certainly do that.
Well, and just to be clear, I fully appreciate the conservative approach that you and Pam have taken to this, and it shows in these numbers. And I guess it's more of just an open philosophical question for the whole council, is to what degree are we comfortable reducing that percentage in order to achieve greater levels of service, et cetera. So I had nothing specific to recommend other than just that observation.
It's a great observation.
Well said, Gary. In that same spirit, I remember seeing that there was some staffing, like in excess of money or money unspent on certain staffing positions. And so I was trying to get a 30,000 foot view of what monies were available going into this whole discussion. That wasn't clear to me when I started 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So just those things, I look forward to teasing those apart.
Absolutely.
And Terry, to your point, the town annual holiday party is coming up. I can see Pam ordering more food and
Yeah. Maybe we can actually get real shrimp dip
Noted. All right, sorry.
It's a great conversation. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say, it's a lot of money for Ridgway that could be spent pretty quick if it was a rainy day. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, but regardless, Terry, you bring up some really good points. And it's really important to be thoughtful and strategic about how to deploy some of these funds. So same slide for the Water Enterprise Fund. All those milestones with a projected ending water fund balance of $1,392,787. The next slide is related to the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Similar milestones with projected ending fund balance of just north of $1 million. Want to highlight some personnel pieces. Personnel expenditures in total across all three funds, that includes general, water, and sewer, equals approximately 29.7% of total 2023 expenditures. What's interesting about that is last year at this time, this PowerPoint presentation, that percentage was somewhere around 35 or 37%, I believe. So I was really trying to figure out why that went down. Sorry to admit that. And Pam and I haven't really talked about it yet, and we'll probably highlight it later in the evening, but total general fund expenditures is a little bit inflated for 2023, given the $750,000 pass-through contribution to Wetterhorn Homes for that project. I think that is a bit, maybe a big piece of that. There's some other elements too, but just wanted to highlight what that percentage is against all three funds. New personnel budgeted for 2023. We have a full-time public works maintenance operator position being proposed. You may recall we brought Rodney on full-time just not that long ago after the summer season. I think the world of Rodney does a great job. We'll continue to undertake the mosquito control duties every summer, but we're glad to have him on full-time. And so that full-time position right there on the slide is meant to depict Rodney going into 2023, if that makes sense. Town is still looking to fill the regular full-time town planner and senior planner position. Happy to report, we just received some applications just here recently, so haven't had a chance to delve into them in great detail, but looking forward to, and hopefully something can come of that. But that position is funded in 2023, and hopefully we can make some headway there. And funds are budgeted in 2023 for 2 full-time seasonal parks positions. I have a good feeling that we're going to get Emmy back. Fingers crossed, she's a great worker. Hopefully we can get her back for the summer and add someone else on top of that. So this slide should look familiar. It's in a different color than it was during the retreat, but that the top depicts the proposed revenue number for sales tax, $1,325,000. That's a 0% increase, essentially carried over from the 2022 adopted budget, and that's a 20.1% decrease from the actual numbers for fiscal year 2021. And then there's some excerpts below that from the economic and revenue forecast for Colorado that was presented in September, this last September. I won't read the whole thing, but the forecast anticipates continued yet slowing expansion, but the path forward has narrowed with a worsening economic outlook around the world. The possibility of a national downturn looms. So a bit ominous, but hugely important to keep in mind. And then this is the sales tax chart that I've had in here for a while. It's in Broncos colors. I don't know why. I'm not a Broncos fan, but we have actuals for 2021 now, and you'll see an interesting climb over the years. And with 2022 sales tax projected, I think slightly above 2021, what came in 2021, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Is it tapering off? Is it, what's going on here? So just an interesting little chart.
It would have a totally different impact if it was in Raiders colors.
Yeah. True,
Very true.
and that's the end of my portion of the presentation.
All right, thanks, Preston. Pam, you're gonna take it from here?
I will. I was not planning on going over the budget itself unless any of you have any questions on it. Just thought we might want to focus on the capital improvement. Plan. So I wanted to go over the items that you had asked to change at the last meeting, just to make sure that we're all in the same place here. So what council had asked for on the 10-year water fund was to move the water collection system piping of Ridgway ditch from the head gate down into the 5-year plan. So I moved that into the 5-year water fund. And in the 5-year water fund, we added a feasibility study of the micro hydro construction and piping of Ridgway ditch. So that was placed in there, and it was placed yeah, it's in the plan. It is not placed within 2023.
Not the budget, it's in the
It's in,
five-year plan.
correct, it's in the plan. And then within the 5-year general fund, I clarified the microgrid on the Space to Create building as far as how it was worded. And those were the only things that I had that we changed after our discussions.
Will the master plan for the athletic park also change? I think.
Yeah, that was a prior meeting, but it is in there. That got added in a couple meetings ago, and it is in.
It's in the 5-year.
5-year, yeah.
Okay,
But it's in 2023, it's budgeted for 2023.
right, right.
Yes, it's in the 2023 budget. So if you go to the capital improvement plans, everything that's yellow is what I have put into the budget right now. So those items, I could just go through them really quickly. The 5-year in the general fund, 2 items at Heritage Park. That's the construction of a split rail fence and preparation of construction documents. The furnishings for the Space to Create room, the furnishings and audio visual. The master plan for the athletic park. Setting aside funds for the purchase of a front end loader in 2024. And possibly purchasing a parcel in River Park subdivision.
So the question, there's 4 more items that aren't in yellow, but should have a budget line item.
Excuse me, John?
There's 4 items, the master plan implementation and subdivision updates, 513 through, and then town hall assessment design. There's 4 things that actually have a budget line item but aren't in yellow.
That's correct. It's just because they had a budget line item assigned to them at one time.
Okay,
It doesn't mean anything. I mean, I could remove that just so it's clear that they aren't in the budget, but
they are in the budget, but they have a line item.
that's where they would go if they
Right.
were.
Gotcha.
But I could, like I said, I could remove that just to make it clear.
So that's a great catch, John. I had the same question. And I have a comment about one. The microgrid for the Space to Create. I sat in on a 2-hour hearing by DOLA today on specific to funding for microgrid for resilience. So there is in this next fiscal year funding available that I think that project would apply to. So my suggestion would be that we potentially consider, first off, that funding would equate to about another third of the cost. A third of it would be bought down by the federal, it was used to be a tax incentive, it's now a pay forward thing. Another third of it could be bought down by this microgrid grant opportunity, meaning that we would only have to really fund a third of that budget. So my suggestion would be, if you thought it was worth the squeeze, is that we move about $20,000 from that 37 into the 2023 budget, predicated on whether or not we get the funding to fulfill the full project. But if not, then the money's not spent. But meanwhile, we'd have access to it rather than having to pull it forward at a later time. So it's a suggestion up for debate or whatever you want to do with it.
Terry, can you say again where that 20,000 number came from that you just?
So my thumbnail quote that I put in that proposal was for about 36,000. 30% of that would be lopped off by the federal tax incentive, but another third of it could be eligible for this DOLA microgrid grant that I think could be applied for and secured this year. And so if you took that, roughly 40K and divided by 3, I'm just rounding up. I mean, you can pick any number you want, but I think we would be into at least 15K, assuming we could get the other pieces funded. We have 37,000 in the budget in the 5-year plan. I don't think we need that much, but if we were to push it forward into 2023, I would suggest maybe rounding it up to 20K or something of that nature.
Well, I'm open to that. I do think that there's a lot, I mean, we keep having this conversation. There's so much funding out there coming down the pipeline in the form of grants and such. Trying to manage them all is, of course, the challenge. But
well, and that brings up point number 2, which is, should we put a small line item budget in for this year to hire some consulting assistance for going after this grant money, another 20 or 25K to hire somebody to manage, take the burden off of staff and actually focus and identify the appropriate grant opportunities and file the initial letters of intent and all the usual, protocol in getting into the queue for these things. So that's a completely unidentified line item, but something I'm considering with Samuel Power is working to push for that for this year's budgets. Let's put money aside to go find money.
And anything climate related, CC4CA is looking at what assistance they can provide to member organizations. Preston, there was a survey that went out. Did you see that? Asking for ways that CC4CA could support municipalities and counties in going after some of this infrastructure money for climate related activities. So I don't know if they're looking at hiring some consultants that could help out member institutions, but people are aware that it's a burden on towns right now.
yeah, Anita mentioned that to me as well. And there's actually grant money out there for the first time ever, maybe, to potentially go towards hiring this staff person that we're talking about. Usually,
Is that the serpent eating its own tail?
yeah, I mean, it's really necessary. I can't remember. Vetch Foundation was one. Can't remember what the other one was, but I do think we're going to need some help to try to manage the task of getting our hands on some of this amazing infrastructure money that's out there.
Yeah, at a high level, it's a unprecedented. I hesitate to say once in a lifetime opportunity, but there is an enormous aggregation of funding coming from a variety of sources that's going to be available in the next 1 to 3 to 5 years. That the return on investment of hiring somebody to go after it might be very lucrative.
I don't disagree.
As the manager of those human resources, how do you feel about that, Preston? Having something else that you're responsible for in that capacity as a contract grant writer?
Yeah, well, consultant would be one thing, and much easier in my eye than adding an FTE. But I don't know.
Just that.
If we're talking about a staff person with the scope of administering grants and applying for grants, I don't know that there's enough there for a full-time position, maybe a part-time. But of the thinking about a consultant, Beth, I did see the CC4CA survey. I took that survey. I know Region 10, John, you're aware Region 10 has that,
Yeah.
position that will be dedicated, the way I understand it, to helping municipalities and other organizations navigate this influx of funding and grant opportunities. So there's definitely some avenues, but we don't have clarity yet on how to take advantage of that, right? And a lot of these funding opportunities don't even have programs and requirements and criteria yet. Some do, not a lot do. So it just remains to be seen. So I
Well,
don't know
getting really specific, my proposal would be that we set aside $20,000 to $25,000 for a contracted consultant. That's roughly $25 an hour for half-time. In the next fiscal year, you know, we'd have to explore hiring this person or this team or whomever it is, but nonetheless, it might be a worthwhile expenditure in terms of future return on investment, because the timing is now to get in on this. If we wait a year to start going after this stuff, we'll be behind in the opportunities. But I think there's so many different buckets we can apply for a variety of needs that the town might have if we just had somebody to, you know, go chase the ambulances.
Well, what's everybody think? I think it makes some sense. Pam, you have thoughts? Are we throwing the budget by talking about this?
No. No. This is why we're here.
Yep.
So I heard two different things. I heard the contracting consultant and I heard the microgrid. So are you going to discuss both of those?
Yeah, that's my thought.
Let's go back to discussion on just the first one first, the microgrid.
Mhm.
And Terry, you were trying to earmark 20K as
Yeah, 20 to
as
25,
anticipated.
well, I think would be our share of the final cost of doing that project based upon what I believe is readily accessible funds, both on the federal tax credit side, which is immediate, you know, it's a upfront payment, and the, you know, another third of the cost of the project, I think, is eligible for DOLA grants, which there's already money set aside for. So I think we would be safe moving 20K roughly into a actual budget line item. And if, you know, that's predicated on, that's what brought up the second thing, is somebody to go after the grant or if staff were to go after the grant. But I think we could implement that project for about 20K in 2023. And that's irrespective of the second subject, which is, well, how do we apply for those grants?
And you said that was immediate, so that's something that would have to be pursued at the first quarter of 2023.
Yeah, it's up for this year's funding. So there's money, you know, I'll forward to whomever, all of you, if you wish, the PowerPoint from this DOLA hearing today that I sat in on, but it lists all the various eligible projects, and this one fits right into many of them. So I think it's a safe bet that we could get some local funding for.
And in their announcement, is there a timeline that includes the decision date as well?
Yeah, there is, and I may not have all the details memorized, so I'll forward that information on.
Now I know why you brought that up about the 76%. Eye on that one.
And it's Christmas.
Nothing accident, John.
Dear Santa.
Well, I do think, you know, if it's not too concerning for staff, put it that way, I think we should plan on going for some of this stuff with the money that appears to be coming down the pipeline. I hear you, Preston, that a lot of it is not being formally lined out and programs identified and stuff, but it sounds like Terry's done his homework on a couple of things, and I have no doubt that for the, you know, calendar year 2023, it would make sense for us to budget some money for some likely consultant help to help identify some of these funding sources and go for some of this money. Everything from this microgrid project to the pickleball courts, you know, it's master plan of the roundabout. The roundabout.
Ridgway ditch.
Yeah,
Ridgway
absolutely.
ditch.
So we're not having any trouble mentioning things that.
Spend money.
Well, yeah, there's a ton of things to spend money on, but if there's people handing out money, we need to jump on that.
We need to be in line with our hand out.
So, I mean, spending money on a consultant seems like a high dollar return on our investment. If we're spending money to have someone help staff, make these things happen for Ridgway, spending $25,000 on that could bring in literally millions to Ridgway.
That's my thought.
Yeah, I agree. Truth. I don't think anybody disagrees with that.
Nope.
25,000.
That's just throwing out a number.
It seems low to me, but I don't know.
Well, that contractor, yeah, I think 20 or 25,000 suffice. I mean,
For a part-time consultant.
well, on call, as needed.
Yep.
Managing hours, whatever they rate, not to exceed 20 or 25,000. Not too difficult. If it sounds like there's consensus for something like that,
Agreed.
20 or 25K.
That's a question.
Being a newbie again here, if at this juncture, we identify that number and that contractor starts hypothetically,
We can amend the budget.
we can amend the budget
Yeah.
and add more funds.
Yep.
It's based
Yeah.
upon the demonstrated return.
Right. If they
Yeah.
start making rain for us. Yeah.
Yeah, so pencil in the higher, I would say pencil in the 25,000. And then I'm on board for revisiting this. If we get a lot of grants that then need to be followed through on, then we'll put more money at it, because then we're getting that return on investment.
I agree.
This is kind of an allocation that comes with appreciation immediately, not with depreciation.
It seems like a no-brainer to just hire a contractor, because, we really don't want to continue to overextend staff and want to make sure that everyone is well taken care of. And, there is money for it. The woman who spoke to us from DOLA was saying that there's money. We just need someone to find it. It seems like a great idea.
We need to hire a pig to sniff out the truffles.
You are the metaphor man.
All right, so I'm hearing consensus on 25 grand for that item.
I'm good with that.
And for the
Yes.
additional, and then are we looking at like 20 grand for the microgrid then to move this year as well?
I think so.
So just a thought on the microgrid. We would need to identify if that grant opportunity, Terry, which it probably is, if it's set up as a reimbursement, we would need to identify the full expenditure of, say 37,000. And we would identify a revenue offset of however much that grant is. And so
Okay.
your estimate of 37,000 is, somewhere in the ballpark. My recommendation would be that we stick with that on the 5-year plan. And it sounds like what I've heard so far is there's majority wanting to put that in 2023, which is great. But we would just identify a revenue offset for that, for whatever grant amount we'd be eligible for.
Well, that's fine by me. I mean, that's a good, safe way to do it, sounds like. I mean, we wouldn't end up spending that much, but better to have it, if you have to have it identified as something that you show for the matching, et cetera, then it makes sense.
So Terry, I just want to be clear, because I'm going to put this in the budget.
Okay.
You're saying that grant is going to be a third of the cost, is that correct? Approximately?
Yeah,
Okay.
just to summarize, I assume, let's just say it's 36, it's easier math. If the system costs 36, I think we get about a third of it from the feds, and this grant might, avail us of another third, so that we'd end up spending roughly 12 or 15. That's why I thought 20 would be safe.
Great, thanks.
But if to Preston's point, you put the full amount in, then you've got that to reference, even though we never have to tap the full amount.
Correct, but there's two different line items that I have to work with, so that's why I was asking you. But
Okay.
thanks, yeah. I got it.
Okay.
Okay, that, where were we before that? Discussion about influxes to the additions to the budget. We were looking at the general 5-year and 10-year plans, right?
Right. Correct.
I did have one question. It was on 10-year capital improvements. Oh, sorry, this is not the general stuff. Never mind.
That's fine. I mean, we're talking capital improvement plan, so go ahead.
Okay, it was just, there are those athletic park items on the 10-year capital improvements plan. Should we do anything about those as we're trying to, get that master plan linked before we do anything? I know there's like a volleyball court and there's a whole bunch of stuff on there that might not necessarily have credence after we have that master plan.
I would say we leave those on. They showed up at some point on the capital improvements plan for some reason. And then when that master plan, they should be considered in the master planning process. And if they're thrown out, then we can revisit the capital plan in next year's budget cycle and get rid of things that don't apply.
Yeah, to me, the priority is to get the plan done so we know which of those things we can.
So they just go away once
Yeah.
we have that master plan, so, yeah.
Does that make sense, Paul?
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry, I was not on the correct screen to hit the space bar.
It's all good. So what else on that?
Okay, so if everyone's good with the 5-year general, go to the 5-year water. There are 5 items that are going to be taken from this CIP and placed into the budget this year. That is the GAC equipment. That whole project is now in the budget along with those grant funds that are almost offsetting it. The water meter at the water treatment plant and the continuing meter replacement plan, which we are in the middle of. That's a 5-year plan. The repair of the flow measuring device at the ditch and Lake O, and replacement of one of the public works fleet vehicles, which is also split with the sewer fund, which has 3 items, which is the replacement of that fleet vehicle, reserves that we're going to start setting aside for the new wastewater treatment plant improvements, and the preliminary needs assessment for relocating the plant. Those are the items we're looking at right now that are going into the budget from all the CIPs. Okay, so there's nothing, of course, from the 10-year going in.
Right. Other than we've already discussed. Any questions on any of these items?
I don't have any. I have one quick question. If we can back up a little bit
Mhm.
to the water enterprise fund and the sewer enterprise fund.
Are you in the budget? Russ?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I was wondering, it seems like our numbers are going down in those 2 funds, or at least in the sewer fund. As what our fund balance is. And I'm curious, are we actually recovering fully on this, or am I reading this correct?
So in the water fund,
Right,
you're asking about the 2023 revenues and expenditures?
right. Is that just a conservative estimate, or are we actually fully recovering? You understand my question?
And I'm sorry, I don't.
He's looking at I think he's mostly looking at the ending fund balances.
Correct.
And seeing how they've been going up slightly the last 3 years and or the last 2 years, and then the 23 adopted budget number is much lower. He's wondering.
Is lower. I see what you're saying.
So I was just
But
trying to
that's
figure, is
because
that
the
just-
revenues, the projected revenues are lower. So what happened in 2022 is we took in some grant monies that will get expended in 2023.
Okay,
So it's inflated in 2022 with those grant monies, and it's deflated in 2023 when we spend money. That's the way to- that's roundabout way to say it.
okay. So we are recovering, there's some grant monies involved.
Yeah.
It's kind of spiking.
Yeah,
Okay, and it would be the
so
same
they're
thing.
crossing over. And then actually that GAC project, which is the project that's going to be happening in the water fund this year. There's a number of years of grant monies that have come in for that project that will all get expended in 2023.
Okay,
So that's probably
And
interesting.
same thing for the sewer enterprise fund.
No, sewer would be different. So
It's not dropping by as much, but
let's see.
it's gone down. Went up a little bit from 21 to 22. And
So that's because the projection in 2022 of tap fees did not happen. We projected our revenues in the sewer fund in the beginning of 2022 at 556,000, but coming in at close to 395 because we didn't receive those tap fees. So actually revenues in 2023 are projected to be higher than the way 2022 is ending.
Gotcha.
And expenditures are up because we're doing a number of those projects that we just talked about in the 5-year
okay,
capital.
okay.
When you end up with a situation like that, where you're getting the grant in one calendar year and spending it in the next, which you just explained, does that qualify as being called a pass-through as well? Or is
No.
that just a
No,
temporal
everything is adjusted in our beginning fund balance. Do you remember when we talked about that line at the very top, like if we looked at the general fund in the budget, the beginning fund balance, the 2021 actual is the number that we received during our audit. That includes all of our monies in the banks. So that's how much we're holding in our investments and our savings. So we start out the year with that, then we bring in revenues and we have expenditures and those monies carry forward. So as we go into 2023, we're carrying a really nice beginning fund balance there. You can see it, it's $3,814,000. $814,103 that we're bringing forward as we enter into the year. So no matter what year those monies came in, they're following us as we enter into the budget year. So there could be in that beginning fund balance of $3 million, a significant amount of money that we're going to spend in 2023, and it would just wash it in that year.
understood? I was so far down in the budget line items that going back to that initial number is not a,
So that beginning
Reflex.
fund balance helps us to understand what our ending fund balance is, right? So when we go to page 7 of the general fund, that's where everything comes back into play. So we've got our expenditures, and then we have our revenues, which were on the first page. So our expenditures minus our revenues plus our beginning fund balance takes us to our ending fund balance. So our beginning fund balance is $3,814,103. And right now, without the few changes that we're now making, our projected ending is $3,200,000. $201,817. So really a
Yeah.
small difference in where we're beginning and where we're ending. And that's because our revenues and our expenditures are balancing out. And hopefully that's the same thing we're seeing in our water and sewer funds. That's our goal.
Right. Okay, so per the agenda, that covers everything you had to cover under item number 2 on the agenda, right?
If council has any questions about anything on the budget that,
Aside from council initiatives, because we'll deal with that separately.
right, yeah, but I'm sure you've all looked at it numerous times, and if anything has jumped out or you have any questions about it.
Not since the last meeting, no.
And also ask for any public comment, either here in the room or on Zoom. And again, we're going to take up the council initiative, the funding of our funding request that we're receiving from local entities. We'll take that up separately next. So if there's any questions about the budget in general or the capital improvement plan stuff we talked about, raise your hand, either here in the room or on Zoom. Okay, are we comfortable going to the review and direction on council initiatives and funding requests then?
Yep.
Okay, so that's page 3 of the budget document. There are quite a few, just to note right off the bat, there are quite a few increases in the requests that we get every year. There's a few that we typically get every year that we haven't gotten any request at all. But that's not abnormal. I want to say right off the bat that one of the single largest budget request is from Charbonneau, of which I'm on the board of directors. So, Preston, I think I should use myself from that discussion. Is that correct? What you're doing on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, once that's taken up, I think it'd be good to sit at the dais and to participate in that conversation.
Okay, so let's set aside that request for now.
John, to your point, just in aggregate, the total requests this year are about 50% higher than the last couple of years. Not to put any shade on any one specific request, but just pointing out that this is approximately a 50% increase over previous years.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
It's noticeably higher than the last couple
Yeah,
of
it's
years.
Well, roughly 92 to low 60s is about 50%.
2 to 92 is
62 to 92. Now that includes though a new request that the
Yeah.
council has not heard before from the Erie Mountain Rescue Team that is requesting 10,000.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not drawing any, like I said, I'm not drawing any specific attention to any specific request, just noting the difference in the totals.
and I'm noticing that this.
Going over the items where we haven't received anything, I'm surprised about the Uncompahgre volunteer legal aid. As long as I've been here, they've always requested money. I don't know if that was a slip on their part.
I feel like that happened at some other point when I've been on council and we said they've always asked and we allocated it anyway. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I don't remember them ever doing that, but
We've done it for some. I can't remember if we did it. for
last
them.
year, there were people who didn't request and council gave funding to them just because they were on this
I think
list.
Brenton gave you.
But that one is the one that really for me, but I don't reach out to people. I just,
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, actually, Center for Mental Health, I think we actually.
That was,
And they did not do a request last year. at council.
Also, the food pantry may fit into that category. I recall what Beth was mentioning. This food category, the food pantry, one of those as well.
Yeah, the food pantry did not request money last year and council did allocate money.
Well, and I would just mention about the Center for Mental Health, for just kind of touching on these. They've been purchased by Access Mental Health, I think. They've been purchased by an entity that's regional, that is in much better financial state than the Center for Mental Health has been the last few years.
They're not a nonprofit group anymore?
I don't know if they're a nonprofit anymore, but the Center for Mental Health doesn't actually exist anymore. It's been subsumed by,
Oh,
are
okay.
you aware of this, Preston?
Yeah, I think it's Access.
Access is,
Health. I think it's just Access.
I'll check into
I think that's one we can scratch off the list for now anyway, because they're a totally different entity.
Well, another that sticks out is KVNF radio. I mean, they provide a pretty healthy service to our community, but they didn't ask for something this year.
Apparently not.
KVNF usually doesn't ask for funding. That it usually happens during the concert series. Something that we usually do is we trade services.
In this council initiatives, I'm not seeing the Ridgway County Land Trust.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that question too. Did we put that?
No,
request?
so this is the list that we've got within the council initiatives. There's two more items that I wanted to talk to you about when we're done. One was the home trust request. We had a discussion at one of our budget meetings and you said you wanted those funds to come out of affordable housing. So I was just going to clarify that with you. So that's a different line item. It's actually not in council initiatives.
Okay.
And then the community garden has in-kind support requests that I wanted to discuss with you after we went through the initiatives.
Okay.
Pam, does the $0 as of August 1st just mean we had dispersed those? Or I mean, the like Colorado West Land Trust.
That's correct. That
Yeah, it just means
means that
they
they
have-
did not make a request for their funds as of August 1st.
Okay. Has everybody requested their funds as of now from 2022?
I always have people who don't request by the end of the year and I just cut the checks. But I wait, I try to wait for them to do it on their own.
But she waits to do that until Noel night.
We should send Russ to deliver them.
Yes.
We should do that in Colorado Gives Day so we get some bonus.
Yeah.
It says the Center for Mental Health is merged with Access Health System, expanding access to care. And I don't know if I want to dig into their access is nonprofit or not, but they've been absorbed. Anyway, back to the list at hand. I did. That's what I had the same question as Russ about the home trust, and I remembered that we rolled them into the affordable housing line item. So you want to just start at the top? That's kind of what we usually do, and just kind of go through. What's everybody feel about the volunteer legal aid? Go ahead and fund them, assuming. I mean, it's certainly a really critical program. What's everybody feel?
How long has that been occurring?
Years and years and years.
As long as I've been here, which is like eons.
That's not Patty Bennett.
What's that?
That's not Patty Bennett.
No, Patty's long retired.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we should go ahead and fund them.
I have no reason not to.
The first one, I don't like to party volunteer legal aid that hasn't requested, but has always funded. We funded
And
them.
what dollar amount do you want in there?
I would say 3,000 again. Does anybody want to suggest something else or feel different? Hearing none, you want, so moving on, Partners did request 1,000. Partners is a great program. That's one that's the same as they've always asked for. I don't have a problem with that. And I guess maybe just throw out if you've got concerns about any of those first dozen or so. Colorado West Land Trust asked for an additional 2,000 over what they usually ask for. from 3 to 5. Again, they're a really great organization. This is another place where that high carryover fund balance that Terry wanted to point out at the beginning as an opportunity to give back to community. Creates an opportunity, I should say. So please weigh in, council, if you've got feelings one way or the other on any of these.
These buckets were actually what I was referring mostly to in that argument, not so much those line items we already discussed.
I appreciate that. You were going to say,
I was gonna ask how many total requests have not been addressed that you've been doing for years that we could just all in one nod say if there's been no change? There's just consider the status quo as.
there's 5 of them here on page 3. The volunteer legal aid, KVNF, of course, Center for so 4, remove the Center for Mental Health, I think. So that makes it 4. The third one would be Ridgway County Soccer Association, which I'm not sure. I think the only reason that didn't come up is because John Cornblue is retired, and I think I'm not sure who's running that program now. Do you know, Preston? Is it Yodi or?
No, it's not Yodi.
Yodi's coaching.
If you said his name, I'd know it because I did some things for them this summer, but I didn't know him.
Brian,
Did they? No,
No, not that.
sorry. Ryan.
Maybe it is Brian, but it wasn't that last name.
It's a parent, I assume.
yes.
Do you know? And then the food pantry is a no-brainer, obviously.
Right.
Mhm.
I think the public art, that's one of those no-brainers.
Well, for now, we're just talking about the ones that didn't.
Oh, it didn't.
That didn't request. Going on JT's question, we're just considering the ones that didn't get put in a request, to try to fill in those blanks if we're going to. And like for something like the soccer association, we could, put off making a decision one way or the other on that and
Check with them,
reach
see if
out
they
to them
actually
and see if they.
yeah.
But you don't like to do that.
Put it off?
What's that?
When?
Between now and our December meeting.
I have to prepare resolutions for your adoption.
That's right. So we have like.
Another option, we could do a lesser amount since we didn't get a request. I don't know their status on what they need, but not to give nothing to that organization.
Yeah, why don't we cut it in half?
That was my
There's a
thought.
place-
I'm fine with that.
Excuse me, so
Cut it in half. is what they're saying.
1,500?
Yeah. Let's see, it looks like they're now called the Erie County Soccer Club and actually have a website.
your county soccer what?
The
Club.
Club, okay.
OCSC. And their board, Brian Weinberg, he's the
Oh.
president.
Yeah, that's right. That sounds
H. Helen Disco's on there, John Cornblue's still on there. So we're okay with a $1,500 gift?
I personally would stick with the 3, just because it's kids.
Because you
and
like
it's soccer, and I like soccer, and it's the kids.
Erie
But-
County Baseball didn't ask for anything. What about baseball?
I won't argue the logic behind it, but
Soon you're gonna see a pickleball request in there.
that's right.
We already have, yeah.
$500,000.
Well, okay, I'm hearing some different numbers.
Maybe it would be easier to go line item by line item, then I can follow you. better.
Sorry to bug
Okay,
you.
That's
that's
all
fine.
right.
So we're giving 3 to volunteer legal aid. I was trying to go line item by line item and then I silence.
There's a mute.
The partners program, everybody's okay with that? Thumbs up?
Yeah,
Land trust, 5, or do you want to go lower?
Did they give a reason in their
It's-
letter?
It's in your packet.
Yes.
Just trying to scroll.
I don't, to Beth's point, I don't remember them actually saying why they needed additional.
They kind of generally said that they see some conservation opportunities on the horizon that they'd like our help with, is the way I remember reading it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find it.
I don't know that I want to go to the 5. I'd either keep it at the same or split the difference at 4.
Or
I want to play poker with Beth.
No, don't.
no poker tonight, folks.
Terry, you already secured as much funds as you needed in the first 5 minutes of this meeting.
Terry's on pain pause.
Yeah, it's the painkiller.
Actually, I'm not. That's the problem.
Oh,
He's off.
Stand on his judgment, guys.
All
What do
right. Make it 4.
I'd be good with that.
I'm fine with 4.
4 is good.
No. Okay, that takes us to the Voyager program. They went from 7 to 9. Voyager's doing some cool things. They've just opened up a whole program for younger kids.
They were clear that the extra $2,000 is looking at childcare. So that to me is a massive service that this community.
Absolutely. Huge thumbs up for me.
Yeah, they were one of 2 recipients of the Sharing Success program that we handed out SMPA for that very reason. They're an anchor.
Yeah, they're great.
I'm good
Okay,
for 7.
so I'm hearing thumbs up on 9. Juvenile diversion, the same 8 they've asked for years. It's an amazing program as well. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
actually, juvenile diversion didn't ask you for anything. Council, a number of years ago, a previous council agreed to this.
Oh,
And I don't remember how far out it goes, but we entered into an agreement.
So it's not, well, it was an initiative at one point, I guess.
they used to give,
They used to come every
used
year,
to come.
remember, but, so,
I don't recall that detail. But
yeah.
And they still exist.
Yes, they still exist. They got guaranteed funding from San Miguel County and all the jurisdictions in San Miguel and Uray and all their jurisdictions here. And then they headed forward into a program that they're now doing. So that's why we don't see them, and that's why they did not give you a letter. I just put it in saying now.
If you don't know, they do an amazing job of keeping kids out of the legal system.
Yeah, I don't know them.
They are amazing, and you know, our kids need all the help they can get these days.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a no-brainer.
How do I apply to be eligible for other contributions?
That's a number that we've always kept as just a slush fund for when people come in over the course of the year and ask for money for a particular event that they're putting on. That, so I mean, I say let's table that number for now. I think the 5,000 number is fair, but until we come up with our bottom line number, we probably might want to revisit.
Like little slush, how would they call it? Egg money.
Mad money, something like that, yeah, slush fund, so everybody understands the point of that one.
I like that.
I mean, we often get requests for a couple $100 contribution towards some event or another. So that's where that comes from. How about KBNF? Thumbs up.
Yeah.
Thumbs up for me.
It's good.
Thumbs up.
Me too.
I think we're in agreement that we don't need to do the Center for Mental Health. So we can actually take that line item off the budget.
I'm going to leave that blank for this year. I can't take it off because
Okay.
we expended in 2021 and 2022, and
Gotcha.
you can't take it off until it's completely.
Okay, so it's a
Not
few years,
used.
back. Okay. Second chance is always an interesting discussion. they always ask for more money than we end up giving them, just so the UVs know that. But interestingly, it's their ask this year isn't that much more than what we gave them last year. Oftentimes it's a third again as much or more. And I'm not denigrating Second Chance by any stretch. Just don't misread that. The Second Chance does amazing work with the feral cat program alone is a huge benefit to the county and the town.
Take that. Oops,
What was that?
I'm sorry. I was talking to my roommate here.
Harry, step away from the man.
He goes by slave, but I don't usually publicize.
He's interested in the feral cat program. Is he? All righty. I mean, everybody look at their request. Any thoughts?
Is there a contract? We don't have any.
No, they've always, Second Chance is when Kelly's always wanted us to have a contract, and we've always been like, no, we just want to keep it as a more casual relationship, but to answer your question, no.
Okay.
John, can you speak a bit more to the Second Chance? You said that they always ask for more money than they need.
Well, I shouldn't have used the word need, because I'm not the person to decide what their need is.
They've asked for more than we give them.
We've asked them to give them, correct. I'm trying to find them in the packet of asks.
It's first one.
Basically, they, I mean, as we all know, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say that the Second Chance thrift store is probably one of the biggest earners of money in the county, and certainly one of our giant sales tax contributors. So they do an amazing job, put it that way. But the
COVID down is big.
pardon me?
The COVID down is big.
Yeah,
The COVID, post-COVID down.
post-COVID dealing with animals. That's what Sue's saying. On significant, I mean, their request underlines a significant increase in unclaimed stray pets in Ridgway since COVID. I think they're kind of stating that that's the main reason for their increase this year. They also talk about the feral cat program. So, I mean, I just, what I was trying to say, Polly, is that in the past, pre-COVID, we would often get a request for, you know, easily this close to this 9 or 10,000, and we'd usually give them 6 or 7. So there's just a history of them asking for a lot and us giving them a little bit less based on us having to kind of spread the love around.
Thank you.
And I found their request a little confusing because it actually states 2 different numbers. It starts off with 9306 and then in tabular form it says 10306. So I'm confused what the request actually is.
They picked it up wrong.
It says both.
Oh,
It starts off in paragraph form. It says 9306, and then they go to tabular form, chart form, and it says 10306. So.
there's
Wow.
microphones.
It also says 10,566.
Yeah, that was.
Where's that further down?
That one's on the first page, like right under the here's what we want section.
It's in the bottom of the paragraph that starts off with the 9306.
Yeah, she's right.
About 3 lines from the bottom, 10566. So yeah, there's 3 different numbers they've shown here. So
Of the 3, I'm good with 93.
That is really
they should pick the lower one.
maybe maybe that's the game we're playing here. Is
I was gonna suggest something like 8. Like I understand that costs are increasing for everybody, but we have all of these requests. And I don't really have anything out of their letter to suggest that their mission has changed drastically. So to acknowledge that with a slight increase, but that would be in keeping with how we've approached this in the past.
Okay, we have
That sounds good to me.
a suggestion of 8 on the table. Is there everybody?
I want to point out that 9306 is a prime number.
And that has relevance how?
I actually
I
Like-
don't really know, but I just had to look it up to be sure.
Payments. What were you saying, Beth?
Oh, I was just teasing Terry. It's not, it doesn't matter. That's 8,000 is my suggestion. Cause like I said, their costs are going up, as are everyone's, but we have a lot of requests on the table and I'm a big fan of knowing why your request went up.
Yeah, there's all sorts of discrepancies in their request. It refers to the 2021 budget. It looks like she used the template from last year and didn't change it in every place. So suggestions have been made to give them 8. And I think I heard Polly say she was okay with that. What's everybody else there?
That's fine.
That's fine.
I'm okay.
Okay, 8 instead of 9306. Got any concerns, JT? You okay with that?
It's not prime though.
It's split the difference and
Yeah.
I like 8.
Okay. The next one is a new request this year, neighbor to neighbor. I think it's a good one. In my opinion.
Actually, not
So-
new. They just haven't requested for 2
Oh,
years,
interesting.
but we pay them again for as long as I've lived here. Lived here, been in this position. Neighbor to neighbor has been something that the town has contributed to.
Except for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I don't know why, but
What
they're
is it?
back. Neighbor to neighbor is helping seniors. They
Meals on
do
Wheels kind of thing.
assistance to neighbors that
Yeah.
have needs that are usually homebound.
There were rules we could put in.
This.
I'm
1,000 bucks.
thinking maybe they got grant funds during that time because they.
That would make sense. That would make sense, yeah. Okay, so I think I'm hearing consensus on the thumbs up on that one.
Thumbs up.
Eco action is not asking for a giant. I sort of was wondering if we might see a big increase from them, but they only asked for 1,000 more. So do I feel on that one?
I think they're doing amazing cutting edge stuff. So I support whatever we're comfortable with giving them above their.
And I would echo Terry's, is not just topically, but the amount of work that they've been doing and outreach and ramping up their education, and as not just by looking through the lens of council, but just having watched what they've done the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I have no problem with $1,000 increase.
Okay, and here comes up on that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because a few years ago, probably pre any of you guys but me, there was a time where they were giving us a warning that they were gonna have to start asking for 20. So I think only 6 is great still, so thumbs up on that one. Region 10,
That's actually dues.
that's our dues, so
They said it as they spread it across the
and
region.
it's tiny increase and not a giant amount, so that's okay. Student scholarship. Everybody okay? We're still giving 1,000. We started out, just so everybody knows. Excuse me, we started out with a $500 scholarship probably 8 years ago, 6, 8 years ago.
Maybe even longer than that.
And then a couple of years later, we decided to bump it to 1,000. Does anybody want to consider increasing that, or what do you think?
Can we,
How do we feel about a 15? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Beth.
I mean, I really recognize that we've got kids and an extra 500 could be great. I'd love to discuss some of these other requests before we.
Okay, let's table the student scholarship until we decide where we're going with everything else then. Here on Beth's suggestion, is everybody okay with that? Yep. Uncomparative Watershed, another organization doing great work for us. Park. Oh, sorry, I skipped a park. Everybody okay with that?
Mhm.
We are talking public art.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
And does that 3,000 get used every year?
Yes. I can speak to that because I'm the president of the board. Yeah, we live on this money.
Is that the sole revenue?
We get a gift from the Weaver Foundation to do the plein air events, the cost there. For that
Occasionally you've gotten actual pieces of sculpture and things donated.
donated.
Other than that, that's it. Thumbs up on that one.
Very much so.
Okay. Same for UWP.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
big thumbs up.
Anybody need history on the George Gardner Scholarship Fund? Anybody not know who George Gardner was? He was a really amazing guy, local teacher, mountain guide, just a really amazing community stalwart, who died in climbing accident a few years ago. And scholarship fund was founded in his name, and just does great work. They sponsor a senior route trip every year. They do all sorts of great work in the schools. They're a wonderful organization. They were doing the ski swap until this year. Voyager took over the ski swap, which is happening now, by the way, so they're tomorrow. But I think they're a great organization. Everybody okay with that one?
If
Yep.
Yes, familiar with it, and think that's great that we can give at least 1,000.
Yeah. Soccer Association, what did we decide to do? 1,500 on that?
That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's what we had talked about, yeah.
Give them half that. Since they-
I'll push once more for 3, but I'm not gonna argue, that's fine.
Okay, Kevin is being, he's pushing this one. He wants to give him the whole 3. Anybody agree with that? Or-
Is this gonna come back to bite us in the next couple of weeks when they were like, oh, we messed up, or are we doing this as a penalty?
I don't look at it as a penalty. I look at it as giving us some money when they didn't ask for it. I guess you could look at it either way.
I just see it's been consistent over the last few years. I see all the games from my back porch. It's a big community deal. That's, I know it's not much of an argument for it, other than anything the kids are running around and supporting the kids playing soccer.
So you're
I mean-
saying you'll make up the difference?
Hot dogs.
What were you say, Beth? Is that you?
Can they
I-
dedicate a VIP section in the grandstands for the council?
I was just gonna say though that like if Kevin feels passionately about it, I just threw 1,500 out since we didn't have an ask. $1,500 in the spectrum of this total at the bottom isn't that much. Let's pencil 3,000 in, and if we are looking for places to trim if we're uncomfortable with the total, we'll come back.
I think that makes sense. It works. All right, we're gonna skip Sherman for now. We agreed to the 1,000 for the food pantry. Weehawken is asking for 1,000 more than they have the last, I guess over the last 2 years, they've asked for 1,000 more each year. This feeling, Weehawken's another one that does great work for kids in the community. Anybody not comfortable with that?
The oven? Does it need anything on top, cheese anything, or is it good?
I don't know.
Terry, hit the mute button.
Mute
Sorry.
yourself.
Close the fridge.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm hearing thumbs up on $5,000 for Weehawken, right?
Yeah.
The CAIC. They're asking for $1,000 more. Another one that seems like a good organization. They do good stuff.
They do good stuff.
Okay.
They're a really huge asset to our community, especially like in the winter time and
Yeah.
making sure that people don't get buried.
Have they increased their staff as well recently? Do we know the background? Was that in there?
They did have something that I remember being like, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm hearing thumbs up on that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's very modest $500 request from the Western Heritage Society. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah,
Mountain Rescue, that's a new big ask, but a really important one.
it's tough to argue against it.
And it certainly is. Do we know if Ridgway has been asked for the same amount?
They have, Ray, city and the county are all being asked for $10.
Do you know if the other two have stepped up with
I
that?
do not.
Thought that at the meeting with the county that it was mentioned that they were going to give.
Going to.
10,000. Did Jake say that?
I think Jake said that.
I think it's a worthwhile.
We'd be very communal of us to match and maybe hopefully take the city in the same mindset.
Yeah, I think we need to take our cue here from the city or the county. I think the question here is, this is a fairly large dollar request, but how many members of our community may find themselves in need of mountain rescue at some point?
I would also add, there's a number of members of our community that are volunteers in the organization. They have a great, volunteer presence.
Yep. Okay, so am I hearing a thumbs up on that one?
Thumbs up.
All right, so I'm gonna step down for the discussion on the Shervino as a board member for that. And let you take over.
Okay. So, huge increase on the Shervino. Thoughts, concerns?
I actually have a question for staff as we go into this discussion. I don't remember it being discussed with council that we were pulling the beer tent from Sherbino. So can I just, did I miss a meeting? Did I miss something? What's the background on how that happened from our end?
So we don't come to council with what we do with concert series.
Okay.
It's done at staff level. So we budget, and so council has never weighed in on what we do at the concert series. So that's why it didn't come to council.
Okay.
Is the background as to why we pulled it from Sherwood and took it over?
Yes, and what I had told them was that we had other organizations who were saying that they thought that the money would be shared. So what we did is we had 4 different organizations help in the tent this year, and they got a percentage of the receipts.
Okay. And that was like,
So other general comments about the Sherbino. I mean, clearly, I hate to overuse the term anchor facility, but I think to some extent the service that they provide and the economic development that ensues is part of one of the major parts of the current identity of Ridgway. My friend that's been helping me with my surgeries from out of town, he's gone to the Sherbino 3 or 4 times in the last month, and when he does that, he goes to the Colorado Boy, or he goes out to dinner or whatever. I think it's a major, like I said, identity now to the cultural and arts scene in our town. So I think it's worth considering a good amount of funding for it. I don't know about the specific amount, but.
The thing that the request doesn't identify, though, is the amount of money that had accrued in those previous years as part of their budget. And I can't remember how much. Did the Sherbino also, and maybe Sue, you can speak to this, contribute to other organizations in those previous years?
No, that was part of the consideration of after we had done it for a couple of years. We wanted to kind of get our feet underneath us and then figure that out. It was part of the discussion, but it had not.
Got it. And so maybe to that point, then what was the revenues in the previous years, the income from the beer tent?
I have my whole presentation. Do you want me to do that?
that's really good with opening this up, everybody, to get some other input here.
Sounds like it might be the numbers that'll clarify what we're trying to figure out.
Sure. Sue, please.
I have to try to order dates here, I can't.
You got what?
In order, my notes are getting get through it.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sue Hush. I'm the board vice president for the Ridgway Taco Society, and I am gonna read from my notes so I don't miss anything. My first job as our, to represent our board is to thank you all for your past support. In 2017, as we planned for our renovation of our historic theater, the Sherbino staff and some board members and volunteers traveled on what we called a learning journey. And we visited more than 18 arts and music organizations on the Western Slope. We gained lots of information, and one of the things we learned was that there were 2 venues out of 18 that aren't regularly supported by a local government by a line item in their budgets, us and the right. When the town decided to allow us to run the beer concession for the July concert series, we understood this to be acknowledgement of our value to the town and the community. Like the town, we do our budget in the fall. Our 2022 budget included the revenue from the beer tent, which is approximately $30,000 annually. We were already working on acquiring brewers and supplies when we were informed we would not be running the beer tent in 2022, and this had a huge impact on our budget. We respect the town's right to make those changes, but the post-budget nature of the change was definitely most impactful. Some may think that our terrific programming at the Sherbino and the Courtyard at 610 are profitable. Not true. As is true all across the board in every venue, ticket prices cover less than 30% of our budget. The revenue pays the artists and the musicians, but does not cover maintenance on 2 of Ridgway's most historic buildings, nor the cost of our amazing staff, utilities, insurance, marketing, supplies, and other typical business costs. We rely on donations from supporters and from fundraising events. As an organization, we do a lot of fundraising, which benefits not only RCS, but many businesses in Ridgway. Not to mention providing our community and visitors alike with cool stuff to do. The fabulous Fête de la Musique and the Ridgway 1K San Juan Barrel Fest bring residents and non-residents alike into the downtown core of Ridgway. Local restaurants and businesses benefit from increased foot traffic from all of our events. The Colorado Grand Tour introduced hundreds of antique car drivers. And just to be clear, it was the cars that were old, not the drivers, to our great town, and brought business and awareness to local restaurants and to our awesome ice cream shop. Despite these successful events, our budget still has the gap from the loss of the beer tent concessions. We'd like to note that in 2021, and this goes to one of your other discussions, thanks to our amazing director's diligence, we were very successful at getting the Shuttered Venue Operator Act, the Payroll Protection Program grants, and other grants that allowed us to keep our staff employed. And that year we reduced our request. And I think you're seeing that bounce from the availability from not having the availability of the grants that were happening during that time. This year, we've increased the size of our request significantly to reflect the loss of the beer tent and the availability of other grants for us. The Sherbino, the Courtyard at 610, and the 610 Arts Collective are important contributors to the success of our downtown businesses. According to, and this is a mouthful, the Arts and Economic Prosperity's Economic Impact of Nonprofit Arts and Culture Calculator, and yes, there is a calculator like that, based on Ridgway's size and our total annual expenditures of about $317,000, and our total annual attendees, we have over 12,000 butts in seats at our events in 1 year. The total economic impact of our organization is nearly $590,000, and it benefits the town with over $24,500 in direct additional income, not to mention the ancillary. In summary, we respectfully request that the town council consider what Ridgway would look like without the Sherbino, the Courtyard, and the 610 Arts Collective, and our significant contribution to the economic well-being and vitality of our community. And we hope that you will approve our request of $20,000 for 2023. And thank you for your time and consideration. And did that get to where we needed on the numbers?
Yeah, I was trying to get that metric and how you calculated it
Yeah.
as part of the budget.
It's a crazy, I can give you the calculator link, but it's a big mouthful for a title, but it's really.
Did you start calculating that after the first year that you took taken over the beer tent?
The calculator's barely needed.
Not the whole calculus.
Oh, the calculator.
Including the amount of money that you made in
The first year was pretty low because we had to buy all the supplies, the barrels, the pitchers, all of this stuff that then in subsequent years we were able to reuse. And we've gotten pretty darn efficient at that stuff. So we didn't have to expend those funds again.
Gotcha. But in terms of planning on that in your budget going forward, when did that become part of your budget plan?
Yeah, in the second year that we did it. Yes, we've been counting on it since then. Anything else? Thank you so much. We're gonna head off to the Sherp Talk.
Thanks, Sue.
Thanks.
Hold my seat.
Anybody online have any other comments, questions on this input?
And thanks, Sue, for that summary. It was great.
Where are we at, council? What do you think?
As much as I would love to also be a part of this conversation, I am going to accuse myself from this.
Understood. I appreciate that.
Well, I personally have no reason to suggest that we lower the amounts, and I'm happy to vote for that, but I'm also open to other suggestions.
I haven't come up with a snappy suggestion. $20,000 in light of the other magnitudes here is really significant. And I have attended plenty of events at the Sherb and totally recognize its importance as a centerpiece to Ridgway. And the calculator results are expensive. But this is a big number as an ask.
Understood and agreed. Although it appears that it's less than had they actually gotten the beer tin sales, so.
Polly, what do you think?
It's really tricky. I was actually just leaning for, or I was just like going for the space bar to talk, and then I was like, I don't know that I have a fully formed thought. I recognize that $20,000 is a lot of money, and I also recognize that, especially when looking at the rest of the line items, it is a significant chunk. However, I also recognize the value in the Sherbino and 610 and the art collective. I mean, children's art classes and dance classes, which is something extremely near and dear to my heart. And it's tricky. It's tricky. I don't know that I have a fully formed thought on how much to give, but I do think it should be a higher number than the others, simply based on the amount that the Sherbino and the whole collective, for lack of a better term, has on our community.
You know, one thought that comes to mind, thanks, Polly, I totally agree with your confusion, is the potential link between the value that the Sherbino has and has had and its future value in relationship to the space to create residents. You know, it's in absolute close proximity, couldn't be much closer, but I'm wondering if in the next few years, we're going to see an interesting synchronization between not only the welfare of those who are residing there, but their businesses and the interaction between the various media, I'm not sure what the right word is, that the Sherbino represents. I mean, they truly do, you know, represent the cultural hub of our town to some extent. And I think it's going to become even more prominent in the future. So again, I don't have a suggestion on the number, but I think, you know, funding it to a large degree or larger degree than some of the other line items is warranted.
Okay, I'm gonna throw out a number since I tried to make you guys do it and you won't. What about 15K?
How about 17?
17.5.
I'd like to consider more of the metrics before we actually bandy numbers.
Then
Uh,
give us a metric, JT.
You know, I disagree with Polly on the front that, you know, in terms of comparing it to other organizations here and then identifying it as something in greater value than other places in town. Sherbino's expanded. It's expanded its programming. Sure, it's had a big impact in town and continues to do so. I also agree with Terry that there will be a synergy going on, which I think is an opportunity for the Sherbino, also on revenue. So I have a hard time. I feel like 20,000 is a reach, a big reach.
Except that we make a lot of tax money.
Yeah, noted. Even
I'm
so-
sorry, I was unable to hear what that comment was.
The comment was that they also bring in a lot of tax money for the town. Just by having being there and what they do. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, my metric is I am kind of gluing my eyes to all the other requests. And certainly there are ranges of, you know, perceived importance from one organization to another. But to me, I have a hard time getting down the road to the full 20. My number is closer to 10 if I'm gonna throw one out there. And so just consider that the bookmark to the 20 and the numbers you guys threw in there. And with that said, I just wanted to make sure that we're keeping an eye on equity and also the fact that we're going into recession potentially. I'm staying more on the conservative side on when these numbers are adding up on all of the asks. And so I'm leaning closer to the 10 just to play it on the conservative side. And out of no disrespect for the Sherbino at all, and I'm a beneficiary of so much that you do and love it, frequent it and patronize it and spend money there and send people there and buy people tickets, all of that kind of stuff. But it's hard for me to get all the way down the line to 20.
You know, following on that, JT, and without spending a lot of time trying to compare it to the other line items, there's numerous other line items that are in the range of 10 that offer different degrees of value to the community. No more, no less, but different. I think the one thing that just came up recently is its effect on sales tax or revenues for the town. Some of these others that we're spending comparable amounts at the 10 level to don't actually generate revenue for the town or open up economic development. They're needed, necessary, and wonderful functions, but don't have as much of a direct cause and effect to the economy of the town. So I'm leaning more towards Beth's 15 as a useful compromise.
I would sooner accept that as a logic for the request than I would the loss of the beer revenue.
Mhm.
I almost feel like the beer revenue as part of the metric for your budgeting going forward. I don't think that's necessarily the logic, but I do lean on, I hear what you're saying, Terry, and I hear what you're saying, Sue, about the tax revenues. So yeah, I mean, happy to go north of 10, certainly. But I think we all need to take measure of all the other of not just this year, but in subsequent years, what kind of increased asks will we get down the line as well?
JT, I might also say that the biggest part of the issue this year was that we were already past the budget cycle when the news came. And so, you know, in subsequent years, obviously we have more time to plan ahead on something like that. It was a big crunch because we had already started into the process of purchasing things and purchasing beer and, you know, margaritas and getting all that stuff ready to go. So I think that timing was of the essence this year for us, and that obviously we'll be able to plan a little bit in the future.
And I hope there's other ways that there can also be, just like our conversation with the chamber, different ways that we can help incentivize ways for you as well to continue to generate additional revenues as well. Especially in the absence of the beer booth. So,
Okay, so we got JT at 10, we got Terry at 15, Beth at 15, Polly,
15 sounds great.
can you deal with 15?
I can deal with 15.
Let's do 15.
So,
I would also anecdotally add the cross pollination. I actually saw Sue buy that crazy, freaky, weird rabbit at Second Chance one day that they have on the stage. So that there's multiple cross pollinations between businesses.
Are you done, Terry?
Yeah, I'm done.
I was like, Sue probably would appreciate not just people hearing out of context that she bought a crazy, freaky rabbit.
Yeah, no, it was a frugal purchase.
so I think, is that Beth at 15? Are you comfortable with that? Terry at 15? This is Russ, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was just trying to make sure we got everybody.
I think that's what I heard, was everybody was good with that. Terry, you're good with 15?
Yes.
Beth?
Yeah.
And Polly is, I'm good, you're good, so 15 it is.
Okay. Thanks for taking that one on.
Sure.
So that leaves us with a couple of things that we kind of held out there. Pam, have you been following along enough to give us a running total? Now you guys-
Yes, that line item, the subtotal for the council initiatives is now $90,390.
It went up from what it is in the, oh, because we added items, right?
Right, well,
We didn't,
we had the non-request people. That we went-
the non-request, and we only eliminated one of those, right?
Right.
So you said 93 something?
93394.
So,
That 394 is that region 10.
yeah.
With these asks, do we ever have a cap where we say we're gonna spend $100,000 on these requests in a given year, or is it all just based upon the requests that come through the door?
That's a good question. I think in the past, many years ago, we were probably, I mean, if we were to lay out the evolution of our budget over the last 10 years, it would be pretty mind-boggling to see how we've grown. And all you gotta do is look out the window at what's going on in town. It has gone on in the last 10 years to see why. So, the answer to your question, maybe between 5 and 10 and 15 years ago, we probably did kind of have well, we're not gonna give out more than 20,000 or 30,000 total. But in recent years, in the last 5 years or more, we've basically just gone by the requests and
Since I've been involved, that's kind of how it's worked, was just on a request basis. But yeah,
I guess the reason I thought of that is because just in terms of begging for equity in these discussions makes it easier for us to decide when we know what our pot is, right? So if we knew that the cap was going to be 95 or 100, a lot of those discussions can be accomplished ahead of this.
yeah, the only response I'd have is that any number we would pick in the way of a cap would be just picking a number out of the hat. Because there's not, unless we want to do an analysis of like a percentage of the budget that we think we can rationalize putting in this pot.
And that's what I was
And
kind of
maybe
getting
that's-
towards, and would that take I don't know, how would we go about putting that on? So doing it as a percentage would be a healthy way to do it, seeing as though, things expand and contract over time, and to know that any given year we have 5% of the budget to work with in allocations for in-kind requests.
I would-
For requests as well. Of
But I-
asks of the economy.
Go ahead, Beth.
I was gonna say, I would argue that that's not necessarily true. In a time where things are really tight, we are not going to touch the food pantry budget on my watch. We're not going to touch the legal defense fund. We're not going to touch the juvenile diversion, right? Like these requests aren't all the same level of elasticity in response to the economy.
I'll agree with that.
I'd agree with that. You know, and then that opens up back again to like what happened at the beginning of the conversation about Second Chance having made a request in previous years for a contract over time. Yeah, maybe we should consider though, just for the long term, those that we think are essentials, we earmark that for, and then we figure out what percentage of the budget then we can allocate
For everybody else.
and allocate, you know, what is available, and if there's more left over, that money could stay there, that fund. If there's any other later in the year requests. Just, partly. I'm not an accountant, but you know, like what we just went through in that exercise of trying to figure out what's equitable versus not in real time is tricky and subjective.
It may be difficult to formulate or to, you know, come up with an algorithm for it. And to Beth's point, there are certain line items that aren't elastic in terms of inflationary pressures. So it seems to me that the painful process that we went through, we should continue to go through on a year-by-year basis without there being really hard, you know, guardrails on this one way or the other, right? Whether it be through a percentage of our reserve or some other formula. Seems to me these discretionary expenses need to remain discretionary on a year-by-year basis.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I was going to say that if we were, I mean, you're proposing an interesting concept, JT, in that we maybe pull out a number of these as quote unquote essential, and then create a pot for everyone else that is some percentage of the budget. The problem with that is it becomes difficult to all agree on which ones are essential. There's a handful that just jump right out as of course being essential, but you could argue that some of the other ones are, and some of us might disagree. So the more I think about it, the more I agree with what Terry just said. And you're right, it's always an interesting discussion when we have, and it's why we pulled it out every year we pull it out as a separate chunk of time and a separate chunk of the budget that we deal with, just because it's a unique thing. And there is a certain awkwardness to it, but at the same time, we're talking about funding community activities and entities that are really important to what Ridgway is. So there's a part of me that likes the exercise because it is so interesting, even though there's an uncomfortable nature to it. And it's really hard for me to wrap my mind around a different way to do it that would take away that potential awkwardness, I guess.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate the exercise as well. One point that was all new to me that Sue brought up that I thought was really important was that when they did their research around the state, it was only Ridgway and Ridgway that did not have a line item for both of those cultural social institutions.
It is interesting.
And that should be explored more, and maybe that exercise of looking at why that's a reality might lead us to a better sense of how to fund everybody.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, when I don't remember ever hearing that statistic in a board meeting at the Sherbino, so I was kind of surprised to hear it too. And it is something that maybe we should explore on some level.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, the fact that we have just allocated 50% more for this line item than any other line item kind of suggests the level of importance that we apply to it for the Sherbino in particular. So maybe it is worth considering pulling this out of this category and putting it into more of a dedicated annual line item.
I mean, this kind of goes back though to when they were talking about what Sherbino does in terms of bringing money in and driving sales tax and filling lodging. I think it is a larger question when we think about our economic development funds and what does sustainability look like. And where are we spending those lodging tax dollars? It's part of why I asked the Chamber of Commerce to, how are you measuring your results? Because I feel like one of the things the Sherbourne does really well is measure their results and bring us data. And so it's kind of a larger question around how do we reward impacts to our community and our economics.
Thanks for bringing that up, Beth. That's a really good point.
Well,
Which is all, I think, a larger question than where we were at right now, but just.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think, to bring it back to trying to wrap up the discussion of the council initiatives funding, how's everybody feel with about the number we landed on? It's only, not even $1,000 more than what we had going in. It's still 50% more than we donated last year, but we do have some unique.
Well, and we hadn't quite resolved a couple of these.
Oh, that's true.
We still had the student scholarship we were coming back to.
Thank you for bringing that back up, and the other contributions item and the soccer club, right? Is that the three? Is there anything else that we kind of able to discuss once we got to our final number?
You could kick the soccer down to 2 and bump up the scholarship to 15.
Boy, you look good.
Ooh, I like that, Kevin.
I
Kevin,
like that a lot, Kevin.
everybody heard that? Good.
You go, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Well, after I guilt tripped everyone for not throwing out a number on the Sherbourne.
Okay, so what Kevin just proposed is dropping the soccer club. Now we're going to change the name of that line item to Erie County Soccer Club, not association. Drop that contribution amount to $2,000 and bump the scholarship up to 1,500, and leave the other contributions item where it is.
Yep, that sounds good.
Everybody okay with that?
Good.
What is that? Does that change $500 or something? So instead of 3, it's actually, it
No,
saves
it's
it,
reducing it by 500.
saves it by 500%, drops it closer to where we're at. I mean, is everybody good with that?
I'm good.
I think, I kind of like the idea of being able to tout that, we're doing well financially, and we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're walking the talk and giving back to the community in big ways.
In great ways. These are all really, really good, positive things for this community.
Okay. Staff have any questions? You're not asleep over there, are you? You were looking down. I'm just teasing.
So I just have a couple things that tie in back into this, and I just want to run it by you, just make sure. That is the request from the Home Trust. At a previous budget meeting, the council talked about funding that request, which was 20,000 out of the affordable housing line item. So, okay, all right, so that's already worked into the budget. And then the other request that we had was from the community garden, which was for in-kind support, which would be staff time, equipment time, and some gravel. And didn't really hear any other supplies that would be involved other than our equipment.
It was all the things that Agnieszka outlined in her proposal last week, and all of that seemed comfortable to us then.
I love the community garden.
Okay.
I think the community garden is a super beneficial. I'm not really sure what to call it, but I think it's a really beneficial thing, and especially with all of the donations that they were able to make last year. I definitely am in support of the community garden.
So how much, I mean, I think we all are, how much are we talking in terms of dollars? Is that just we adding that to Public Works? Like, work?
No, and the only reason I bring it up is because at the last meeting, the mayor said to her that you would discuss it during your budget hearings, so that's why I bring it up. But it is something that's already absorbed into the budget.
Okay,
No brainer.
So no issue, as the former mayor used to say.
It's been brought up.
Yeah. All right, so are we good on all that then? And we're ready to talk about the review and direction of the strategic plan? Yes.
Yeah, so just on the affordable housing, just what I didn't say was the line item has 75,000 in it. We're gonna spend 10 for the home trust, so that's gonna be 55,000, which is.
Yep.
where
actually,
I originally had
20.
proposed it. Excuse me,
We're spending 20 on the interest.
20,
You
yeah.
said 10, so just
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay.
75 to 55, 20.
which is, we, in our budget retreat, we added $20,000 to that line
Correct.
item.
Correct, yeah.
Yep. All good. Yep. All thumbs up here. All thumbs up.
Yep.
Okay. So thank you everyone for that exercise, and that takes us to the strategic plan. Thanks for putting this together, Preston.
No problem.
Do you want to hit some highlights or do you want to go through it?
I will highlight some stuff. I don't plan to go line item by line item unless you guys really want to. But what's before you is the 2023 proposed strategic plan. It's organized by community value. And those 5 values are found directly in the master plan. So I think it's really cool how master plan and strategic plan are married in the way they are. You got value number 1, healthy natural environment. Number 2, sense of community and inclusivity. 3, small town character and identity. Or that's 3. 4, vibrant and balanced economy. And 5, well-managed growth. I like to think I've taken some really good notes over the last couple months going through this process in an effort to get this modified to where it is now. Is it perfect? Probably not. So if you guys have already reviewed it and have found anything that needs to be modified, or reviewed it and found that it's missing some stuff, or found that there's stuff in there that shouldn't be in there, please let me know. Did spend quite a bit of time getting this where it needs to be, taking items off that have been, checked off the list, if you will, and adding new items that are that have come about through the budget discussions, are identified as capital projects, special projects, what have you. So the community garden item, which we were just talking about, is already in here. Assisting the community garden via that in-kind support, gravel to better their driveway area and weed mitigation. So just as an example, that's already been put into this document. There's a whole host of other items that we could spend time going over. You all may want to see verbiage tweaked. Totally get that. So just let me know.
I do have a question here on the sense of community and inclusivity, item number 4. We reference holding a town council workshop solely dedicated to evaluating, considering strategies and funding mechanisms. I think that kind of ties back to something that we had touched on a few meetings back, where there was the bill that passed where we could take some of that lodging taxes and apply that. And we talked about having a special meeting to do that. So I assume that's what this is actually addressing. And I guess the question would be is, do we actually have any timing proposed on that, or do we need to set some timing on that? Are there
we can talk about that now. I think we had left that conversation. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. What I had written down was that sometime in January or February would be a good time to hold that workshop.
Yeah.
And so that's on staff's particular list to reach out when the right time comes to get that arranged.
okay?
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's answering your question.
Yeah, no idea. I was just trying to make sure it had a fairly fairly high priority, because I think that's something that, and I guess where I was really trying to head with this is, seems like if we wanted to modify how we're spending that money, it was something that had to be put up for a vote. And so I guess just trying to understand when we would actually have to come up with a strategy to be able to get it in line for an election.
The idea was we were discussing what we would do if we were going to put it on the ballot in November. And then kind of realized we might not get to come back to voters asking for money multiple times, and we needed to do it in a way that was well constructed. And so putting that off from, I mean, I feel like we were having those discussions in like August, maybe earlier for November election. So it's not terribly far in advance.
Yeah, so we had those, yeah, it was either July or August that we were having those conversations. But yeah, the thought that I gathered was to postpone and afford a much longer timeline to get community input, to really formulate or get some results out of the conversation in an effort maybe to go to the voters at some point.
Right. And I guess I was just trying to figure out when that next election process was, and if it was something we needed to get in quickly in order to be able to have it on the ballot.
We can't do the April, it's too late.
Okay,
The timeframe that you're talking right now.
fair enough.
Yeah,
That's
we would
part
have
of
to
the-
already be forming a question and have
Okay.
it ready by January to get it onto the
So our next opportunity would be,
consolidated with the county in
November.
November.
okay,
And what would be the deadline to get that?
Probably June or something.
No, it's August,
Is it-
Yeah, it's
Oh, it is.
into the summer.
which is why we had the conversation when we did, because there's still time to get it on the ballot.
Okay.
So,
And
Which is why I decided February, because then we can get out of we get out of budget season, we get out of the holidays, and we can have a well-considered discussion about taking a well-crafted question to the public.
yeah, fair enough.
Hey guys, I hate to run after being late, but I am in Tacoma and I literally got here and ate dinner and then ran away. So I have to run. So I'm really sorry. But thanks everybody.
Safe travels, Ben.
Drive safe. All right, so any other questions? I have to be honest and say that we only got this a couple days ago and I haven't had time to review it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. We know how busy you are.
And on that note, I did read it all today, not to. And I appreciate it, actually, and I had last year's side by side with it and the updates from this last year and looked at this, and it made me very thankful to have such an organized, thoughtful process to keep us moving forward and on target. Even being a newbie, but just reflecting on those 2 years and seeing how it's morphed, and it's a responsive document. So I appreciate
it. Great. I mean, I love how, particularly for new council members, to see what we've done for years now in the strategic plan and to actually go, wow, this is really incredible how well it works and how much we get done, you know.
I agree. I was swimming for perceived landmarks from being at sea, and now that I've read both, it makes a lot of things much more intelligible.
Well, it's truly a living document, which is the beauty of it. And it provides us great guidance. So it's, job well done, Preston, to maintain it like this.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you.
You'll catch up soon, John.
One of these days. It took me 40 years, but one of these days I'll catch up. So any other questions or comments on this?
I'm gonna ask one more, just because I'm that way.
We like that about you.
Good question. Vibrant and balanced economy, number one, continued participation in local and regional broadband initiatives. Other than our anchor installation that's on the 10-year to the water plant, do we have any other things we're really working on that actively?
We had signed into that IRU agreement with Region 10 and forgetting the other party. Just in 2021, and I can't remember if there are any deliverables isn't the right word, but if there are any follow-up initiatives as part of that, I'm not quite sure based on not having that in front of me. I think there's, I don't know, if you're asking my opinion, I think that should always be on here to really explore, really.
Just in case there's anything else
Yeah,
come
just explore
down.
the opportunity.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do free Wi-Fi in the athletic park.
Okay,
Yeah, and
But you know what I mean? I feel like that's something that should always be. That's why that's on here. And it had already been on here, and I think it'd be good to continue having it on here. You all think differently.
no, I'm fine with it. I would, like I said, other than that anchor point at the water plant, I wasn't aware of any other initiatives that were kind of on our radar. I'm not saying we need to drop this. It's great. We've got it. I'm sure there will be other things coming that will be tied to this. So
the key is the regional broadband phrase, because there is so much still in the works. I can tell you as the Region 10 rep and Region 10 having taken a huge role in guiding this whole broadband effort we've been in for the last close to a decade. There's still a lot that needs to happen. There's a lot happening in terms of redundancy and being active at the state level. We're trying to make changes in state legislation that allows for more easy access to what they call it, the rights of way along highways and things that for broadband, like CDOT, for instance, coming to the table and letting the kind of regional efforts we've got going happen on their rights of way. There's just, I mean, the best example I can give is when the firehouse project this summer cut that line in the alley there, and it affected the whole region. CenturyLink was out for 2 days, and I mean, what's really now I could go. CenturyLink and the cell providers are basically just kind of going, we're not interested in using this fiber network as our backup. We're fine with what we've got, and then this kind of thing happens.
right.
And at the state level, the state government is trying to figure out how to get these guys to sit down and go, this is here, man. You may be threatened, essentially in particular. I imagine they see the writing on the wall and they're just like shaking in their shoes when they think about their business model being threatened by fiber. But at the same time, they gotta come into the 21st century and take advantage of it if they're going to stay alive at all.
Right.
And so those kinds of things, the regional efforts that are happening with broadband table are huge, and we should continue to be part of that. So that's what that means to me. And of course, I talk to my clients all the time in Silver Ranch and elsewhere. They're like, how come we don't have fiber out here yet? So there is still fiber to be delivered around town. We're those of us who live in the old part of town are lucky because we can get it out of the alley. But everywhere else on the ground is a whole different.
So I have yet to put forward my proposal of using the Green Street Park as a rocket launch pad for Ode's stationary orbit satellite.
Yeah,
You
man,
could just keep waiting on that one, Jerry.
a man just by you, Terry.
Okay, well, I don't even know how to follow up that one. But yeah, that's the broadband thing is, it's kind of, some of it's kind of under the radar.
It's an ongoing.
It's really important. And there's still a lot to be done.
Don't argue that. Just, I was curious.
Hopefully that helps.
Thank you so much for explaining that, John. I also was just kind of like, oh yeah, we obviously need more fiber, but hearing you speak to it really kind of puts it in a new perspective, and hopefully that will give us a little bit more leverage in the future, especially with CenturyLink and such. I actually just canceled my CenturyLink right before we left on our trip in favor of fiber, and they were spicy about it. They were a little spicy trying to.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It's interesting. But yeah, other comments or questions on this?
And this doesn't have to be the last opportunity. If if you have time between now and December 14th, you're bored. You want to delve into this, please, by all means. And if you see something, call me, shoot me a text, shoot me an email with your thoughts. If you want to see something modified, added, removed for whatever reason, and then we'll get into this again with a final proposed version for you all to consider on December 15th. One, just because I'm on the page now, one thing I think is worth highlighting, and I know I mentioned it at the retreat, but I'm working with, I met with Aaron and Liz and Mike at the Plain Dealer, and we're going to begin an initiative to do monthly ads in the Plain Dealer about town happenings in an effort to boost, just as another avenue to get the word out on what's going on.
Yeah, I love that.
And kudos to Aaron McIntyre and Kate over at the Plain Dealer for really trying to think outside the box and figure out ways for the town to advertise more with the Plain Dealer. And just, it really revolved more around like community engagement and getting folks to better understand what's going on, because the Plain Dealer really has a broad reach.
That's a win-win.
Yeah, no, that's something I thought about for a while. So thank you for.
Preston, would this be an ad, a monthly ad, or would it be a standing weekly column kind of thing, or some sort of reserved space?
More in the form of an ad, more like a communication, really monthly. But yeah, monthly, not a standing weekly column, if that's what you just said.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's gonna be a paid ad that we pay for.
Yeah.
Is an updated bulletin?
Actually, that's a good way to put it. Like, yeah, an updated bulletin, just depending on what's going on. Like, for example, if if it's November and we're starting to get some snowfall, we put out press release and communications about snow removal operations and ice control operations. We would highlight that in this ad, maybe not be the whole ad. I actually, at this point, don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know how it's going to be designed. I'm excited to work with Kate and Aaron and Liz and Mike to see how that's going to really turn out, but I don't really know.
I have an image of a Victorian dressed person, like a town crier, holding a scroll. It's like the monthly town crier.
Ben
You're on great meds, buddy.
Spread the wealth, brother.
Already at Terry's house, I've noticed.
Just one quick note on that, on the practical, a lot of people go to their digital version right now. So especially since you put those things already on the town website, to have that be a link back to the web, drives traffic back to the town website as well
Oh,
for
yeah.
expanded information.
That's a great idea, Jay.
And yeah, I believe that's part of this, but I'll check with them. Just want to highlight that. It's a cool initiative, I think.
Kudos. Stakeholder.
Okay. Anything else? It's a good meeting.
They always are. I enjoy this.
Huge thank you to staff, Pam, Preston, you guys do an amazing job.
Yeah. Guys did a great job getting us all together.
Thanks to Shane and Jeff for hanging in and listening. This must be really entertaining.
It's always interesting. Nice to know the other side of it.
That's right. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Unless anybody wants to linger, I'll say what adjourned.
Awesome. Good day.
Trying to stop World Cup time.
World Cup time.
I just subscribed
Yeah, Terry.
for this, yeah.
Hey,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys. Have a good night. Happy
Good night,
Thanksgiving,
Pam.
everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Pam.
Bye.
All your hard work.
Talk to you soon, Terry.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.